so, what's the message there? How do we duplicate that over here? How do we recreate? I would argue that obviously a country like England has a much richer culture of struggle than we do. You definitely get a movement over there accepting it as fact that prison is a very strong possibility. But that's not the first question that's asked. It's never, how do I stay out of prison? And I think that people need to, accept that, and look at other cultures and take strength from what they've done in other movements in other countries. And it's not the top of their priorital scale to stay out of prison. I don't think anyone, like I said, I don't think anyone does anything that they believe has a 100% chance of getting them into prison. And again, most of what we're talking about here are not things that are illegal, by the letter of the law. These are things that they make illegal because it makes them uncomfortable, as we see in the 804 case. So nothing that I've said during this talk applies strictly to underground action at all. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's, we look stupid. I think they laugh at us over there. I really do. I think they look at people and they're like, that's all you've got to deal with. And, look at what we've been under. We knew, there's actions that were carried out where literally they knew they were being followed en route to, the lab they were going to raid. And they felt, moderately comfortable or moderately confident they'd shaken their tail and they still went and raided the lab anyway. I mean, that's just, these days you get one knock at the door from the FBI in this country and people drop out forever. That's what it's come to. When I got indicted, the FBI made their rounds around Seattle, knocking at the doors of my friends. Pretty routine, happens all the time, big fucking deal. And I would say over half those people, the first time they got a knock at the door, they just vanished.
On a personal note, have you regained some of the possessions that were taken away from you at all? The computers, the phone?
No. I don't expect that will happen. I mean, their only burden is to they have to say that or claim that and not prove that whatever they took is being used in some ongoing investigation. So, in theory, the statute of limitations, as long as that's running on whatever crime they're investigating, they are allowed to hold on to those things. They took like 15 computers and I don't know, like 10 phones and just about everything I owned and boxes of paperwork and so forth. So no, I don't expect to see that stuff back.
The two gentlemen who released the other groups, 804, how were they caught?
And I wrote an article about this. I have a website, voiceofthevoiceless.org, and I wrote an article about this. But the BJ and Alex case in particular is interesting because it sort of covers all the bases. And it's a good case study in how people are indicted and sort of the anatomy of an FBI case against activists. BJ and Alex, these are the two people that allegedly, well, they both pled guilty. They released mink from a fur farm in Utah. And they were caught in several ways. The most damning evidence was cell phone records. And I talked about this last night. Their cell phones, so the FBI alleges, were on them or in their car at the time of the action. And how many people realize that when you have your cell phone on, even when it's not on, it leaves a permanent record of everywhere you go because it's constantly broadcasting a signal to the nearest tower. That's a permanent record. So they knew exactly where these, clearly they didn't think of this at the time, but so they have records, cell phone records. They can see their cell phone, just bleeping across the map, down to the fur farm, staying there for the time of the action and bleeping its way back home. After the action. So that was the most damning evidence. There was also one of the activists actually dropped a car key at the fur farm, which, like a cell phone, it doesn't exactly it didn't place him at the scene of the crime, it simply just placed his key at the scene of the crime or his cell phone at the scene of the crime, but it is very difficult to work around something like that in front of a jury. And so there was that. They had informants in the case who, in the end, didn't really give them much to work with, but they did plant one woman in the Salt Lake City animal rights movement. She attended meetings. She actually targeted me at a conference just like this. She approached me after the conference, and she's kind of this like cute blonde girl, and she's like, "Hey, I have some questions for you," and proceeded to sort of orbit us all weekend. Proceeded to take me on an all-expenses paid trip to Moab, Utah. And as soon as we got in the car, she began to pry me with questions about local ALF activity that I didn't know anything about. This stuff happens, so they use this person. There was things like bank records where this person had dropped a car key, so he used his credit card to hire a locksmith. So they see, okay, well, which activists have hired a locksmith recently when they found a key at a scene of a crime? Okay, that was another way they caught him because they could see through his bank records that he had hired a locksmith. So the lessons there are, what the mistakes that were made were not paying for things in cash, carrying a cell phone to a crime, things like that. There's things you can't shield yourself from. There's always going to be informants. They're in this room right now. That's always going to happen. Again, I would just say big deal, but it certainly does happen. So people get caught in numerous ways, but the number one way people get caught is through people talking. It's through loose lips. More than anything else, it's people not knowing how to keep their mouth shut. I talked about this last night. I don't need to drill it in anymore, but someone said to me years ago, they said, nobody talks, everybody walks. And that's the mantra we should all chant to ourselves daily.
Peter, thank you so much for your talk today. Last week I attended the Animal Law Conference in Boston, and they spoke about the iPhone in particular. I guess some cell phone records purge themselves after so long, but the iPhone in particular can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And just in general, cell phones, many people might not know this. Even if your cell phone is off, it can still track you. So anytime you're even having a conversation that's sensitive, the battery should be out or it should be away.
Yeah.
And even cars like Chevrolet has OnStar, those microphones can be activated without your knowledge. So even talking in a car without your cell phones in the car, your conversations can be monitored.
Totally true. Laptops now have built-in cameras they can activate remotely, built-in microphones they can activate remotely. And I didn't want to be redundant from last night, so I didn't go into this, but what you said is 100% true. Your cell phone is a roving microphone. They can activate it remotely. This is totally verified. This is not, Big Brother spooker stuff. This is totally verified. They can turn on your cell phone, even when it's turned off, and hear every conversation within earshot. And I'll tell you this, you said taking the battery out. I don't have any reason to think that is not effective. You obviously need power to power a microphone. But I'm going to tell you, I was watching, this is like maybe a year or so ago, Fox News. I wasn't watching it, but I saw a clip of Fox News. And there was a story about how, this is on Fox News, how the FBI or the law enforcement can now listen to you through your cell phone, even when it's turned off. And you had the newscaster holding up the cell phone, saying the only way to protect yourself is to take out the battery, and she takes out the battery. Now, if we can all accept that Fox News is an apparatus of the state, why is the newscaster on Fox News telling me to take the cell phone out of my battery? Now, I don't know how it would be possible for them to use a cell phone when the battery's out, but immediately I'm thinking, is there some sort of 10-minute power reserve on most cell phones? Why is she telling me that this is gonna protect myself? I'm immediately suspicious of that. And I don't think it would take much, maybe possibly some sort of to track people, some sort of passive RFID type technology where they could sort of cast out a beam and whether or not your cell phone has a battery and whatever bounces back will indicate where your cell phone is. That's certainly possible. Just consider cell phones a liability all the time. I think that's the safest route. It's really scary. The iPhone in particular, and I'm 100% confident this is totally deliberate, backdoor dealing type stuff on the part of the government and Apple. But the iPhone, you can't even take the battery out of the iPhone. You need screwdrivers or a hammer to get the battery out of that iPhone. And everybody's got one of these things now. I'm 100% sure that's deliberate. Pay attention to what they're doing to us.